America trusted railroads with its future. And for a long time, that trust felt justified. When the Civil War finally ended, the country was exhausted in a way words could not fully explain. Families were broken. Towns were scarred. Graves stretched farther than memory. But the Union had survived. That alone felt like a miracle. People did not want to look backward anymore. They wanted proof that the suffering had meant something. They wanted movement. They wanted growth. They wanted to believe that the future would be larger than the past. Railroads became that belief. You could see them everywhere. Steel tracks slicing through farmland. Bridges climbing over rivers. Whistles echoing across towns that had never heard such sounds before. Railroads did not just move goods. They moved hope. They made distances shrink. They made isolation feel temporary. They made the country feel whole again. People began to talk about railroads the way earlier generations talked about destiny. As if they were inevitable. As if they could only move forward. As if they could never fail. And that belief changed everything. In the years after the war, America expanded westward with a hunger that bordered on obsession. The frontier was no longer a distant idea. It was land waiting to be claimed, mined, farmed, and sold. Railroads were the key. Wherever tracks were laid, land values jumped. Towns appeared almost overnight. Stores opened. Banks followed. A station on a map became a promise of prosperity. Speculators learned this faster than anyone else. They watched where surveyors walked. They followed rumors of new routes. They bought land cheap and sold it dear once steel arrived. It felt like a trick that worked every time. If rails came, money followed. If money followed, prices rose. And if prices rose, nobody asked hard questions. Banks stopped asking questions too. Railroad companies needed enormous sums of money. Steel was expensive. Labor was expensive. Locomotives were expensive. Land deals were complex and risky. But banks believed the story. Everyone believed the story. Railroads were not treated like ordinary businesses. They were treated like certainty. Loans were issued freely. Railroad bonds became financial gold. Banks used them as collateral. Those bonds were sold to the public and shipped overseas to European investors hungry for American growth. The money flowed in from across the Atlantic, reinforcing the illusion that this expansion was not only safe, but unstoppable. Credit multiplied on top of credit. One loan justified another. One project justified 10 more. Tracks were built not where traffic existed, but where traffic was expected. Parallel lines competed for the same routes. Costs exploded. Revenues lagged behind. But nobody wanted to stop. Stopping meant doubt. And doubt meant collapse. Railroad executives knew the numbers were thin. Bankers knew the margins were shrinking. Investors sensed the risk but pushed it aside. As long as construction continued, confidence survived. As long as confidence survived, money kept moving. The entire system depended on motion. What people did not want to admit was that none of this rested on iron or steel. It rested on belief. By the early 1870s, the warning signs were impossible to hide. Freight rates fell as competition intensified. Passenger numbers disappointed. Maintenance costs rose faster than revenue. Railroads that had promised endless profits struggled to cover basic expenses. Yet construction continued. Optimism hardened into denial. Bankers extended more credit to protect existing loans. Investors doubled down rather than accept losses. This was no longer expansion. It was survival masquerading as progress. Then belief cracked. It did not shatter all at once. It paused. European investors were the first to hesitate. From a distance, the imbalance was easier to see. Too many tracks. Too little traffic. Too much debt. Capital inflow slowed. Then stopped. That alone was enough. J. Cook and Company failed. At first, the name did not mean much to ordinary people. But inside financial circles, it was devastating. J. Cook was not just a banker. He was the banker. The man who had financed the Union war effort. The man who had sold government bonds to everyday citizens. The man deeply tied to railroad expansion, especially the Northern Pacific Railroad. When his firm collapsed, the illusion collapsed with it. Banks panicked. Depositors rushed to withdraw funds. Credit froze almost instantly. Businesses that depended on short-term loans found themselves stranded. The New York Stock Exchange shut its doors. 10 days of silence. 10 days that told the truth better than any newspaper headline. America stopped moving. Railroad bankruptcies followed in waves. Thousands of miles of track became financial deadweight. Projects were abandoned mid-construction. Companies folded overnight. The steel that once symbolized the future now rusted in place. Workers felt it immediately. Jobs vanished without warning. Wages collapsed. Hours disappeared. Men who had believed themselves secure stood idle, watching opportunity evaporate. Families burned through savings. Then sold possessions. Then waited. This was not a short recession. It did not correct itself. It lingered. Year after year. A slow suffocation rather than a sudden crash. Hope did not disappear in a single moment. It thinned gradually until people adjusted to a life defined by uncertainty. The federal government offered almost nothing. There was no central bank to stabilize credit. No unemployment insurance. No relief programs. The belief in limited government remained strong. Suffering was seen as unfortunate, but necessary. Markets, many believed, would heal themselves. They did not. Anger replaced patience. Labor strikes erupted across the nation. Rail workers walked off jobs. Factories shut down under protest. The government responded with force, not aid. Federal troops were deployed to restore order. Stability mattered more than comfort. Railroads that once symbolized progress became symbols of betrayal. And this was only the beginning. What followed the collapse did not feel dramatic at first. There was no single morning when people woke up and said the country was in depression. There were no sirens, no official declarations, no clear beginning. Instead, the economy grew quieter. Orders slowed. Pay envelopes shrank. Familiar routines quietly disappeared. People kept waiting for things to return to normal. They waited through one winter. Then another. By the mid-1870s, it became clear that this was not a temporary setback. This was a new condition. Factories that had once run day and night now operated a few days a week. Some shut their doors entirely. Railroads cut wages repeatedly, sometimes without notice. Workers who protested were replaced by men even more desperate. Families adapted in small, painful ways. Meals grew simpler. Clothing was patched instead of replaced. Children left school to work. Pride was swallowed quietly because survival demanded it. People stopped planning. They focused on making it through the next month. For farmers, the pain ran deeper and lasted longer. Crop prices fell year after year. Wheat, corn, cotton, all brought less money than before. Railroads still charged high freight rates. Banks still demanded repayment in hard dollars. A farmer could produce more than ever before and still fall further behind. Each harvest felt heavier than the last. Gold-backed money made every dollar stronger, but only for those who held it. For those who owed it, money became a tightening noose. Debt did not shrink when prices fell. It grew heavier. What bankers called discipline, farmers experienced a suffocation. And slowly, quietly, resentment spread. People began to talk about money differently. Not as something neutral, but as something designed. Something controlled. Something that favored some and crushed others. Conversations that once focused on weather and crops now turned to banks, railroads, and gold. This was new. Before the Panic of 1873, monetary policy had belonged to elites. After it, ordinary Americans felt its consequences in their bones. They did not use academic language. They used lived experience. They knew something was wrong, even if they could not yet name it. Organization followed anger. Farmers formed alliances. Workers formed unions. Meetings were held in barns, halls, and back rooms. People shared stories that sounded eerily similar. Hard work followed by loss. Responsibility followed by ruin. Effort without reward. Railroads became the focus of that anger. They were visible. They were powerful. They charged fees people could not escape. They symbolized a system that had promised opportunity and delivered hardship. Strikes spread. Rail workers walked off the job. Entire lines shut down. Commerce stalled. The government responded the only way it knew how. With force. Federal troops were sent in. Order was restored, but nothing was resolved. The message was clear. Stability mattered more than suffering. This response changed something fundamental. Many Americans realized the government would protect systems before people. That realization did not fade. It hardened. Meanwhile, bankers and investors told a different story. From their perspective, restraint was the only thing preventing chaos. They believed loosening money would unleash inflation. They feared paper currency more than poverty. To them, gold represented morality. Discipline. Order. Two Americas stared at each other across the same economy. One saw money as a tool meant to support life. The other saw money as a rule meant to restrain excess. Neither side trusted the other. The Panic of 1873 did not settle this conflict. It ignited it. As the late 1870s approached, the economy began to stabilize, but the scars remained. Growth returned unevenly. Some industries recovered faster than others. Some towns revived. Others never did. Empty factories stood as reminders of misplaced confidence. Rusted rails cut through fields like scars that refused to heal. For those who lived through it, life was divided into before and after. Before, people believed effort guaranteed security. After, they knew better. That knowledge changed behavior. People saved more when they could. Borrowed less when possible. Trusted promises less easily. The optimism of the post-war years never fully returned. Yet even as lessons were learned, the urge to forget them remained strong. As new prosperity arrived in the 1880s, memories softened. New investors believed they understood risk better than their predecessors. New technologies promised new futures. The same cycle began quietly forming again. Boom breeds confidence. Confidence breeds excess. Excess breeds collapse. The Panic of 1873 did not end speculation. It taught America how painful speculation could be. But pain fades. Confidence returns. What made this crisis different was not just its length. It was what it revealed. That financial systems are not machines. They are agreements. They function only as long as people believe in them. And belief, once broken, cannot be repaired quickly. Those who had lived through the silence of closed factories and idle rail lines carried that understanding quietly. They passed it down in habits rather than speeches. Be careful. Do not assume. Prepare for loss. Decades later, when new panics arrived, older Americans recognized the feeling before younger ones did. The tightening in the chest. The sudden disappearance of opportunity. The realization that something large had shifted before anyone could explain it. The panic of 1873 changed America's temperament. It made the nation more cautious, more skeptical, more aware of its own vulnerability. Growth no longer felt innocent. Progress no longer felt guaranteed. And although railroads would run again, factories would reopen, and markets would recover, something fundamental had been lost. The belief that expansion alone could protect a nation. The comfort of assuming systems would never turn against the people who trusted them. What remained was memory. Memory of how quickly belief could freeze. Memory of how silence could spread. Memory of how progress could vanish without warning. And that memory waited. As the 1880s unfolded, the country moved forward, but it did so cautiously. The railroads did not disappear. They remained the backbone of American commerce. Steel still crossed the continent. Trains still ran on time. But the tone had changed. Expansion no longer felt innocent. Every mile of track carried a memory. Bankers became more selective. Loans came with stricter terms. Credit tightened not only because of policy, but because fear itself imposed limits. Investors remembered how quickly belief had evaporated. Rail executives remembered how fast growth had turned into collapse. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone felt it. The nation had learned how fragile momentum could be. This shift in behavior did not come from laws or regulation at first. It came from trauma. From lived experience. From the realization that markets were not self-correcting in the way people once believed. They corrected, yes. But the cost could be enormous. And the cost was not evenly shared. Railroads began consolidating. Weaker lines were absorbed by stronger ones. Competition gave way to control. What had once been chaotic expansion turned into strategic dominance. Fewer companies controlled more track. Fewer decisions shaped more lives. Stability returned, but it came with power concentrated in fewer hands. That concentration created new fears. Small businesses complained of unfair rates. Farmers felt trapped by freight costs they could not escape. Workers faced corporations larger than any employer they had ever known. The railroad had transformed from symbol of progress into symbol of control. The panic of 1873 had not ended excess. It had rearranged it. This realization fueled new political movements. People who had once trusted markets now demanded oversight. The idea that government should intervene in economic life gained ground, not because people loved regulation, but because they feared abandonment. The Granger movement emerged among farmers who demanded fair railroad rates. State governments responded with laws attempting to regulate freight charges. Railroads fought back, arguing regulation would destroy efficiency. Courts were pulled into the conflict. For the first time, America seriously debated the balance between private power and public interest. That debate did not stay confined to railroads. It spread to banks, to monopolies, to labor conditions. The panic of 1873 had opened a door that could not be closed. Once people realized systems could fail them, they began asking who those systems were designed to serve. This tension reshaped American capitalism. On one side stood belief in free enterprise. On the other stood fear of unchecked power. Both sides claimed to protect prosperity. Both pointed to the panic as evidence. One argued collapse came from speculation and recklessness. The other argued collapse came from rigidity and indifference to human cost. Neither side fully won. Instead, the country drifted forward, carrying both ideas at once. Economic booms returned. New industries emerged. Steel, oil, electricity, and manufacturing drove growth beyond anything railroads alone could have imagined. Cities grew upward. Factories multiplied. Immigrants poured in. America surged again. And once again, confidence swelled. Those who had lived through 1873 watched this new prosperity with mixed feelings. They celebrated opportunity, but they remembered the cost of forgetting limits. Younger generations, untouched by the panic, believed this time was different. Technology had improved. Management had matured. Systems felt more sophisticated. History listened quietly. The lesson of 1873 did not disappear. It waited. When financial panics returned in later decades, people searched backward for understanding. They remembered railroads. They remembered credit built on belief. They remembered what happened when expansion outpaced reality. The panic of 1873 became a reference point. A warning. Proof that collapse did not require war or disaster. Only imbalance. And so the story did not end in the 1870s. It echoed forward. Every debate over money supply. Every argument over regulation. every fear of speculation. All carried the shadow of that first great collapse. America never fully trusted progress again. Not without questioning it. Not without fear beneath the optimism. The country had learned that growth without discipline could be just as dangerous as stagnation. And yet, despite the pain, despite the fear, the nation did not stop building. It did not retreat into safety. It pressed forward, carrying its scars as guidance rather than chains. That was the paradox the Panic of 1873 left behind. It broke innocence. But it also built awareness. The steel tracks that once symbolized destiny became reminders. Not of failure, but of consequence. They taught America that belief must be balanced by reality. That confidence must be earned repeatedly. That progress is powerful, but never guaranteed. Those lessons would be forgotten again. And relearned again. At great cost. History did not repeat itself exactly. It refined itself. The Panic of 1873 faded from headlines, but it never left the system. It became a quiet blueprint. A pattern buried under growth. Every major American financial crisis carried its fingerprints. Credit expanding faster than reality. Infrastructure built on belief, not demand. Investors convinced scale meant safety. Warnings ignored until confidence snapped. The names changed. The tools evolved. The behavior stayed the same. In the 1890s, railroads collapsed again. In 1907, banks froze. In 1929, optimism turned into devastation. In 2008, faith in complex finance shattered overnight. Each time, Americans asked the same question. How did this happen again? The answer always pointed backward. To 1873. That was the first moment America learned a hard truth. Markets do not fail because people stop working. They fail because people stop questioning. Growth becomes routine. Risk becomes invisible. Confidence replaces verification. Railroads taught America how power concentrates after collapse. Strong players survive. Weak ones vanish. The system stabilizes, but fairness erodes. Each recovery creates larger institutions, fewer competitors, and higher stakes. That cycle still defines capitalism today. The Panic of 1873 also changed how Americans viewed government. Before it, failure was personal. After it, failure felt systemic. People began to accept a new idea. When systems shape outcomes, responsibility extends beyond individuals. This shift did not happen overnight. It took decades. It took suffering. It took memory. But it changed everything. Central banking emerged. Regulation followed. Safety nets formed. Not from generosity, but from fear. Fear of repeating the same collapse. Fear of leaving society exposed again. And yet, even with safeguards, the core tension never disappeared. America still celebrates expansion. America still rewards risk. America still struggles with restraint. Because restraint feels like hesitation. And hesitation feels un-American. That is why the Panic of 1873 matters now. Not as history. As diagnosis. It explains why booms feel intoxicating. Why warnings feel annoying. Why crashes feel shocking every single time. The rails of the 1870s were not unique. They were early. They showed what happens when finance outruns reality. When belief becomes leverage. When optimism becomes policy. America did not learn to stop building. It learned to rebuild after collapse. Again and again. And that is the final truth this story leaves behind. The Panic of 1873 did not break the country. It revealed it. A nation willing to gamble on the future. A nation slow to admit limits. A nation strong enough to survive failure. But never immune to repeating it. If you want to understand modern crashes, you do not start with Wall Street. You start with steel tracks cutting across empty land. You start with confidence mistaken for certainty. You start in 1873. Because the first great collapse taught America something permanent. Growth is powerful. But belief without discipline always collects a debt. And history always comes to collect. If this story helped you see today's economy more clearly, stay with us. We break down the moments that shaped money, power, and trust. Subscribe to the channel. Share this video. And watch what happens next, because history never stops repeating.